What happens here is it goes find a formula for an expression for Tn of the following sequences, okay? So Tn of the following sequences, we start off with the likes of question 4, okay? And we go, that's very easy. I do Tn equals A plus n minus 1 times d. Now that's what most people think. Now the problem is here is it's 2, 5, 10, 17, 26. And you're going, okay, 3, oh wait, that goes up in 5, that goes up in 7, that goes up in 9. And you're like, there's no d value. The d value always has to stay the same, doesn't it? So therefore the formula that I have written down here is not the correct formula. It's not the correct formula because the sequences on the board are not arithmetic. So does everybody understand? To use this formula here, you first got to make sure either the question says it's an arithmetic series, it says it's linear, or when you check out the differences, they're all the same. That is the only time you know it's an arithmetic sequence. If it doesn't do any of this, you can't use that formula. You can't use the Sn, you can't use the Tn. Everybody understood? And in this full exercise, you're never going to use your old Tn formula because none of them are arithmetic. Okay? Step number 2, if I'm not using that formula, what formula am I using? Now, I have you guys looking at the minus b formula at the very top. You'll also see at the minus b formula at the very top, there's like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Everybody see that in the corner beside the minus b formula? This is on page 20 of your tables, okay? Now, I have a cheap way of learning this off by heart. When it isn't the other Tn, it's done like this. An squared plus bn plus c. Does everybody see what I did to the minus b version? Instead of using x's, we're going to use n's, and there's no 0. So that's the way I remembered off that formula, but just using the minus b formula quadratic equation. But instead of x's, I'm going to use n's. Now, this is your generic equation for what's called a quadratic sequence, or any sequence in your course that's not linear has to be quadratic. Now here's what you do. You always look at the second difference. What is the second difference? Can anybody tell me? 2. The second differences are 2. Your job is to find out your a value, your b value, and your c value to find your formula. The a value is always half your second difference. What's half of 2? Whatever your second difference is, half it, and you always get the a value. So what's the a value for this question? 1. In your course, for the most part, it's always going to be 1. Okay, but nonetheless, I prefer that you remember it as half the second difference. So please write that down just above the top. A equals half the second difference. Okay? Now that you found out that a is 1, your formula now changes into what, guys? A is 1, so it's just going to be n squared plus bn plus c. Is everybody happy enough with that? It's just a procedure we have to follow. Now, we're going to do what we did in the last one. Can anybody tell me, how do I find out T1 using this equation here? What do we replace n with? Sorry? Replace n with 1. 1 squared plus b times 1 plus c equals. What is T1 in this question here? T1 is 2. And what's going to happen is, it's going to be that equals 2. Anybody tell me what 1 squared is? 1. What happens when you bring 1 over the other side? Minus 1. What's b times 1? b. b plus c equals 2 minus 1, which is 1. What type of equation is that? Can anybody tell me? Quadratics have b squareds. And quadratics only have one type of letter. How many types of letter do you see there? When you see 2 types of letter, you need 2 equations, and it's a simultaneous equation. Paddy, we use T1. What's the next logical step to use? T2. T2 means anywhere you see n, you replace it with 2. Sean? If it's a is always the first term when it's a linear or arithmetic sequence. We said that none of these questions are arithmetic sequence, so the a value now has a new meaning. Is that okay? Okay, so n squared is 2 squared, because it's t2, plus b times 2, plus c. What is t2? What number is t2? 5. Multiply it out. What's 2 squared? And when you bring 4 over to your side, minus 4, isn't it? What's b times 2? 2b. 2b plus c equals 5 minus 4? 1. You now have both simultaneous equations. Do you understand? Yeah? See this equation up here, Sean? The red equation, see it here? I replaced n with 2. And I know that when I replace n with 2, the answer has to be t2, the second term of the sequence. So that's where I got the number 5 from. A is half the second difference. When you analyze the differences of the sequence, the second difference will turn out to be 2, and A for this type of question is half the second difference. Okay, now go again. We have to solve this. Give me a letter to get rid of. Which is the easy one to get rid of? Multiply the bottom one by minus 1, and that will get rid of the c values for you. So what are we going to get? 2b minus b. B. 1 minus 1? 0. Put the 0 back into the original equation. B plus c equals 1. If b equals 0, what is c equal to? 1. Now, you now have a list. You have a equals 1. You have b equals 0, and you have c equals 1. What's the Tn formula again? An squared plus bn plus c. Just stay clued in for a minute, okay? What do you do with a, b, and c? 1n squared. B times b is 0, isn't it? 0n doesn't exist. And what's the c value? 1. So Tn basically equals n squared plus 1. Now look at this, guys. To check your answer to make sure you're right, look at this. You bring down your terms. Oh. 1 second. Then get you out of there. Now look at this. If we're correct, here's what should happen. T1, this is me checking it now. I already have my answer. This is my answer. The question is done. But how do I check that I've actually got the correct answer? Well, I'm going to replace n with 1. What happens? 1 squared plus 1 equals? Correct. T2? 2 squared plus 1? If I did 3, the answer would be 10. I'll do 5 just to check T5. 5 squared plus 1? 26. So you can see by doing this procedure, I found the equation that will give me all my numbers in a sequence together. Okay, now how to memorize this is the hard part. It's learning off a procedure. Okay, so here's the hard part. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to I'll obviously you probably want me to do one more, right? At least. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down a procedure we're going to use every time to do all of these questions. Okay. So here's what you're going to do for your procedure. Okay. Step 1, anybody? So we'll just make it like this. Okay, guys. What's step 1? Write down the Tn formula. Okay. First of all, is make sure it's not arithmetic. How do you make sure it's not arithmetic? Anybody? How do you make sure it's not arithmetic? In question 6, you count the gaps. It's 8, 15, 24, 35, 48. T1 is 8, T2 is 12, T3 is 24, T4 is 35, T5 is 48. Is it arithmetic or not? Is it arithmetic, lads? Why not? Gaps aren't the same. The second gap is 2. Okay. Second part. Use the Tn formula. Use the Tn formula for a quadratic sequence. This is called a quadratic. It's a quadratic sequence, lads, when the second difference is the same. Okay? Does that make sense? So, use Tn for the quadratic sequence. The Tn for the quadratic sequence is this guy up here. Okay, so technically, this guy here, it's going to be in your step as well. So that's what you're going to be using there. That there. Okay. Now, once you do that, what comes next? How do we get the a value? Alright, get the a value by using half the second difference. Okay, and once we've done that, what's next? What comes after that then? After using half the second difference, what's step 4 then? Using T1 and T2, substitute n equals 1 and n equals 2 into the equation and form what type of equation? Form two simultaneous equations. Okay. And then, what's part 5 to the question then? Solve for A and B. Sorry, solve for B and C. Then sub them back into the original equation. Now, it's just a sequence of events that needs to be learned off by heart by constantly doing it. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, I'm going to make this reduce this in size now. 1 second, Sean. Just going to reduce this in size. So what we're going to get is where's my size on this? No, let me do the size. Let me see the size of the writing anywhere. Is it? I might just cheat. There we go. Now, here's what we're going to do. Starting off. Okay. Make sure it's not arithmetic. It's not arithmetic because the differences aren't the same. Okay. After that, guys, use the Tn formula. I have it here. I'm on step 2. Okay. Can anybody tell me, Sean, how do I start off step 3? Get the a value by doing what? Which is a equals 1. When a equals 1, the formula now becomes 1n squared plus bn plus c. I've done 1, 2, and 3. What's the next part after that? Using T1 and T2, substitute in n equals 1 and n equals 2 into the equations and form two simultaneous equations. So how do you do that? Anybody? What comes after this part here? Come on, somebody should tell. It tells you. N equals 1. I don't need to put down the 1, do I? Okay. So it's 1 squared after that. B times 1 plus C equals, what is T1? T1 is? But it's 8, yeah? T1 is equal to 8. When you put 1 in, the answer should be 8. Now look what happens next, guys. What is 1 squared? 1 squared? 1. What happens when you bring 1 over to your side? 1 times b. B plus c equals 7. I formed one simultaneous equation. How do I form the second simultaneous equation? So instead of putting instead of doing T1, we're now going to do T2. Okay, so T2, guys. What do I replace in for n? N equals what, Sam? For T2? We're on T2 here. Huh? Okay. T2, guys. You replace in n equals 2. So that's when you put in n equals 2. 2 squared plus b times 2 plus equals. What is T2? 15. Okay. What happens next then? That's going to become the number 4. And when the number 4 makes it over to your side, it becomes a minus 4. 2b plus c equals 11. Okay? 2b plus c equals 11. Bring the two of them down. What stage are we at now? We're just after forming the two simultaneous equations. So we've completed step 4. What about step 5? Solve them. Any idea how to solve them? So multiply the bottom one by minus. Or sorry, the top one by minus as we're doing it. 2b minus 1b. 1b. C minus c. Cancel. 11 minus 7. B equals 4. And we had b plus c was equal to 7. B is equal to 4 plus what number will give you 7? 3. Now, solve for b and c. Sub them all back into the original equation. The original equation, guys, is located here. Okay, first of all, let's start from the start. What was the a value? 1. What's the b value? Shh. Are you paying attention? B value is 4. What's the c value? 3. If we did this correctly, what should happen? What should happen anytime you sub in a number into that equation? What should happen? David, what should happen anytime you sub a number into that equation that we just got a second ago? Any idea? Huh? Okay, I'll go down. Just give me a second. We got this formula as our answer. The formula that I'm about to underline here. This is our answer. What happens anytime? What happens if I put the number 1 in for n? What should I get? Okay, if I put the number 5 in. Yeah. If I have the correct answer, that should work. Okay, so let's just test one of them out. Let's test T3 out randomly. 3 squared plus 4 times 3. So 9 plus 12 plus another 3. The answer is going to be 24. Does 24 check out? Hence, you have the right answer. Okay, guys. Okay, these are long questions.